Here we are with another episode of Around the Coin. Today's guest, Vlad Panchenko, the CEO and founder of DMarket. DMarket is helping to create a platform, a marketplace infrastructure for Web3 companies to join the metaverse. They're really focusing on gaming, allowing people to trade NFTs, assets, skins between games. This conversation, we really broke into three distinct areas of focus. The first being gaming NFTs, the trajectory of the technology, the challenges, kind of steel manning, the arguments on both sides of why NFTs will be useful or counterproductive in gaming. We talked about Ukraine. Vlad's team was based in Kiev and he rented a plane to fly people out 2 weeks before the war. We talked about what they're doing now and how he was able to utilize democracy in the United States, living in Santa Monica, to catalyze a real effort to make change in that war, literally. And then we talked about just the general trajectory of the human species, both with the ability to connect right in the back of the neck and Matrix style, traveling to Mars, the influence of gaming and NFTs on just the general trajectory of the world, which we, I think, made some progress, or at least crystallizing our opinions on how we see things moving. So wide-ranging conversations on some very interesting topics. So I hope you enjoy. Here is Vlad Panchenko. Vlad, thanks so much for joining today. I'm excited to dig in with you. We've already had a fun pre-show conversation. Let's just start and cover what you're working on first, and then we can get to wherever we go. So DMarket is what exactly? How do you describe what you're working on? And give me like a state of how far along you are and the traction that matters, whether it's like users, revenue, fundraising, etc.
First of all, hi, Mike, and a pleasure to talk to you, and thank you for the invitation. It will be a pleasure to touch whatever we will touch today. Yeah, I'm running, and I founded DMarket in 2017. And DMarket is, first of all, a marketplace to trade digital items from different games. It's based on the blockchain, and the main goal of it is to become a standard in different games. So we, as a players, could not just play games, but also trade items through different games and instances. Right now, we're in the middle of integration of a couple of huge titles, which should be announced by the end of the year. We've been through a couple of rounds of fundraising. And we have, the last time we raised was, the last officially announced we raised was 2 years ago, with the final valuation of 28, I think, million. Yeah. Then, from the standpoint of numbers, we have over 3 million in revenue from the last year. We have over 2 million registered users. And we've been trading items for like more than 10 years. So everything is an evolution, because I've started from trading games in digital form, then the skins from a couple of games that allow it. And now it's just a platform for the game developers who want to touch the Web3 and NFT trading, but don't know anything about it. And want to have all, for one company, like legal stuff, KYC, ML stuff, onboarding, offboarding, everything, with provided as a package with the marketplace itself. And we have the best KYC ML practices in the world in the gaming industry, and the easiest and the most convenient UI and UX for the player in the world.
Where do you think this is going? Do you see there being kind of a centralized marketplace built on blockchain that allows people to trade in-game NFT type products in-game, or do you see it being more of like the actual marketplace happens in the actual game itself, as opposed to separate from the actual games? Like how do you sort of see the trajectory of gaming and NFTs and trading and everything?
We actually don't see both things. So while you will be playing in the best case scenario, you will have the marketplace in the game, where you will be trading with other players, and maybe it was the game developer with those items. But outside of the game, there will be another marketplace or marketplaces where you could be trading those items between games or between IPs and etc. But the vertical integrated experience is better for us, the gamers, because the more people are buying something or selling something, the more interesting is the whole play.
And how is the process now trading outside the game? Is it quite, clunky just by limitations of the technology, or time consuming, or do you feel like it's pretty much as good as it's going to get? Like, technically?
No, we're still far away, but we're much, much closer than we were in 2017. Because even in 2017, when we had the technologies, in general, the public, from the game developers to the players, were not a big fans about trading NFTs and blockchain items. And still, I'm telling you, in 2022, lots of gamers are infuriated about lots of scams and Ponzi's in the NFTs and blockchain. And to turn the tide, that's part of the job we're doing. And as far as I can see, we're doing it good and right. That's one part of the equation. Another part of the equation is regulations. Because for the legal and taxation purposes, to have it directly stated from the government how it should be done, how it should not be done, it took some time. Now, for example, in the US, the legal field is more or less clear. UK more or less as well. So we're moving there, getting there. But still, what we're missing as the players, as the game developers, is a couple of brave cases where it works and brings more fun, more engagement, more, expanding the narrative. So bringing us better experience than it was before.
And how do you sort of see, like if you were to give a steelman argument or give the legitimate argument on people who are skeptical of, I guess the argument is that they're skeptical of there being any sort of NFT necessaryization in gaming, because you have the game developers all on the platform. They can easily manage the database and control which players own which skins and weapons and everything else. And then the argument on the other side is, well, you want to have this decentralized. And the two kind of general arguments I've heard for why it's better to have it on NFT and decentralization is that the game can't control it. Like in theory, the game has all the powers, so they could just take away a skin if you misbehave or something. And then also the inability to trade between different games. How do you sort of think through the nuances of those arguments? Did I enumerate that correctly? Is there something else big?
Everything you've said is 100% right. There are a couple of more arguments. For example, the biggest thing from the players is that if you remember the moment when the mobile games became free to play, before we were paying from $5, $10 to $20 for a mobile game to play it. And then somebody invented that model with everything became free to play. And players were not happy because they quickly understood that it means that we're spending even more money. And the reaction of the public wasn't very much positive, but it worked, it works, and it's getting more and more traction. So everything was fine. So with NFTs, the feeling is close to that. Now, when I'm playing a game and the next one is bringing me NFTs, the feeling is that the game developer is just trying to extract more money from me, not bring me a better experience, not more fun, not engage me in a better way, just to take more money. That's, from my perspective, what's infuriating players the most. On the other side, I was making my first money to pay the internet bills in Ultima Online, where I organized a couple of businesses like getting copper, getting iron, getting crystals, and then organizing the whole group of us, and then we sell that on the market for some real money, real world money, and then paying internet bills. So it was fair virtual labor where everybody was having fun. And NFTs can bring another grade for that and also make that legal and scalable. Because from my perspective, the game industry valuations can add one more digit at the moment we open up that Pandora box. That's what I think.
And to open up the Pandora box, meaning when you say that, you mean add, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, what I mean is that at the moment we will see a AAA game, open world game, where we can interact as a business. So for example, the person in Roblox can create different skins or outfits, sell it right away to another person for real money, and that person do another job for another person and build an ecosystem within the virtual world for people and entrepreneurs to build business and serve each other, to entertain each other, to build items, to do some job, to do some entertaining. So that is where we need the blockchain, the NFTs, and this is what will expand the valuation of the industry much, much more than over $200, $300, $400 billion. For now, it's $170 billion for last year.
And if it's currently managed, if all that economic activity is currently managed within the ecosystem of the game, how is that limiting the GDP or presumably just the opportunity for people? Let me ask it this way. why in the current structure of having the ecosystem of the games themselves, like the AAA game, has closed, they're not allowing you to move skins and out. Yeah, closed ecosystem. How is that limiting growth, or how is that not the best way to do it? Like by allowing you to move skins outside? Yeah.
I have a couple of maybe faraway examples, but very clear for me. We've seen, for example, countries, the whole countries, like former USSR country, which they had a closed economy, not allowing goods to come in or to come out. And the GDP was 100 times lower than at the moment they open up the border, put up the taxation, import tax, export tax, and then you can do whatever you want. This is what I believe in. So yeah, I do believe in a capitalism world where entrepreneurs can do something and invent some businesses within the ecosystem. So for example, with the Steam skins, when Steam opened up an API, somebody did some bad things, like open up a casino and using skins as a money. But somebody built up, for example, the skins cache where you can just exchange one skin on another right away and to trade them right off for the real time, for the real money. Somebody is now can lend you, and I know the guys were making lots of money, just lending you the skins for some money and then working effectively as a credit loan agency, but for virtual items. So this is what I'm saying, complicated for the game developer. That is true. It's much easier to close the borders, hold the fort, and then make as much money as they do and entertain the way they can do. But I believe in humans' creativity, in creating different ways of doing business together, entertaining each other. Just give us the tools, tax us, to do the taxation, like put the pointer, whatever the game developer wants, and then let us create something. I don't even know what, but it would be beautiful.
Now, I sort of interpret this as if you make an analogous sort of parallel to the social networks out there, like Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. Those are all closed ecosystems, and they have their own incentive structures within them. Like a tweet can get liked, it can get reshared, you can get followers, and the same sort of social mechanics are true on each of the different platforms. And if you were to say, hey, we should, if you were sitting here arguing, we should allow people to trade tweets between Facebook and Instagram, or trade assets or trade followers, it would be kind of confusing as to how that practically happens, because these things are not composable. They're not like, I can't put a tweet in Facebook. It almost doesn't make sense. Does that problem exist in these games where, like, if I'm in Fortnite and trying to go to World of Warcraft, like, how could I move? Like the things don't, they're like totally different structures. Maybe you could have the same shirt or the same skin on. I don't know. Does that kind of technical challenge exist, or is that not the right way to think about it?
I clearly understand the question. So the technical challenge, it does exist. So we talked with a lot of TDOs, the game publishers, developers, heads of studios. There is a technical challenge, but it's doable if there is a clear incentive from the game developer and IP rights holder.
Right.
And you are 100% right that we are missing the business case for them. Because to show them that if you open up the secondary market, you will make more money on the initial sales, the initial market. And also, if you provide the proper tools for the players, they will create inside businesses in the ways you wouldn't even imagine. And that would enhance the experience for everyone who's inside the ecosystem. Just give them the tools, give them some freedom, and let's see what happens. So are we missing that kind of case? Yes, we do. But it's going to happen within the next 12 months. I can almost guarantee you that.
Now, do you think on some level, when you made the argument about the country analogy, you said when countries open their borders, they have more trade, there's more prosperity. Totally agree with that. It seems to be one of the, dominant reasons why I think America's GDP spiked up, because it had such strong international trade, and other countries the same way. Singapore comes to mind as well. Do you think that there's also a trade-off in that the countries start to look more similar to each other? Like on some level, if you limit trade, you can have more of a distinguished culture, or in the case of gaming, like a distinguished experience, where it's, if I brought in my guns from World of Warcraft then everything starts to kind of look the same, because everything's like, it's like a bunch of individual lakes that are all now connected. So all of the pieces all look the same. Does that present like maybe a negative experience, or just not negative, but it presents more of a homogenous experience? Everything's kind of looking the same across the different games.
I'm smiling right now because for the moment I mentioned, like, if you will allow everything to be used and traded everywhere at once, then it's going to be like a crazy circus. That is true.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's going to happen this way. So the steps we're probably going to see in the near future is that one big gaming company will have, like, for example, two different games. One would be a sports game. The other one would be a racing game. But you would be able to buy, acquire, or create a specific, for example, sticker, which you could put on your sports helmet or on your racing car. And thus, handmade created like examples of what would enhance the experience. That would be the jumpstart of all these things that happen, where the amount of users using it, having fun with it, will not just double, but go up like in geometrical speed. That would be a not handcrafted experience. That is true. You wouldn't be happy if you're playing a pirate's game and conquering different lands to see something what is far away from the lore. That would be the job of the game developer. What you're allowed to get in and what you're allowed to get out. That's why, for example, on the marketplaces like we built, you can swap the items from one game to another, just because you don't need any more of those items. But you're playing that game, you're just swapping one item to another one, and you're getting into the other game.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So allowing the game developer to effectively maintain the consistency of the game experience, but also have kind of some things that are allowed in and allowed out. Now, what has been the type of games that have adopted this philosophy early on? Has it been smaller games or games based in a certain country or language or style of games? Like, what are the patterns you've seen for early adopters?
Well, worldwide, I would say that it started with WoW and CSGO, Dota, Team Fortress, where they allowed us as gamers just at least to trade the item from me to you and you to me. That allowed many other services, like hundreds of other websites, to utilize that ability as I told you, either to help to cash out or to lend some schemes or do a lot of fintech things around it. That was the jumpstart. What was, I don't know, close to 10 years. From the NFT and blockchain standpoint, the examples where sometimes like creating numbers, like acting PVC, they did drive the adoption to unforeseeable numbers before. That is true. But let's say the monetization model was, let's say, far from perfect. So I've been, for example, maybe I just realized that maybe it's coming from the Burning Man thing, because I've been coming there for like 5-6 years in a row. And after I got there the first time, I was so amused by humans' creativity, which I wouldn't be even able to imagine before. And since then, I believe that every other human personally could create something which other one would never even think about it. So from my perspective, the best approach would be to build the ecosystem and then give us the tools to create something. I've seen some of the games in the development where there are systems of, for example, contracts within the game. And we can put in the contract whatever we think with some milestones and paying some money or items for the milestones, which one of the parties will do. And that's a framework. And then we can put there whatever we want. And that could inspire some other businesses. And this is what I believe in. When it's not a set in stone virtual world, but there's something which you can change a little bit in your own way and then trade that experience with some other players. And I said, there was an Axie Infinity thing. There were other games close to Tamagotchi things or card games, collectible card games. It's fun, but most of the times it was a lot driven by just making more money and getting there earlier than later. What I'm still waiting for, and I've seen some of the great examples in production right now, where that would be just an ecosystem for creative people. And I believe we will see some of those in the next 12 months.
And what's the general size? Like if you had to give a best guess as to the actual economic activity or in some way to measure the number of transactions or value that's happening on NFTs on the blockchain in gaming today?
Well, I see numbers like getting 4 to 5 billion this year and over 6 billion the next year. But those numbers were calculated like in mid-summer, like June, July. Since then, we've seen a huge drop in crypto prices and NFT trading and etc. So I wouldn't think that it's going to grow the next year. We are probably mostly heading into worldwide financial recession. So we have a couple of very unique things right now we'll see. For example, that the venture funds have the record amounts of dry powder in their war chest. So the amount of money venture funds have right now, they have never had before. And they have to invest it by the job. So you have you can just sit on the money. So we will still see a lot of investments. We will still a lot of crypto companies, Web3 and gaming getting the investments. But what I think is going to happen is that we will see less investments into early stage and bigger checks into those who have already proven the business model, the vision and such. Because if before I've seen checks like spray and pray for like 12, 18 months and let's see what happens. When the recession is done, with the runway, the startups will have to get, it's at least 2 years. So, and that's very closely connected to the amount of transactions and amount of money transacted in NFTs and crypto. I think that the next year will be maybe, I hope, the same as it was this year. And then 2024 would be another year when it's going to go, because the best projects will survive this downfall. And then rocket launched what they have and what they have built.
Yeah. And I assume
the question.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And I assume your general scope of this is all crypto companies, or are you talking specifically about gaming?
Honestly, if that's going to be all our like startup ecosystem, it's not going to be different in crypto or, for example, in fintech or I don't know, any other investing sector in the United States. Just because the recession is coming for everyone, for cryptos or low cryptos, it's all the same. And the buying power and the amount of money we're ready to transact in the games and such. However, I've been doing business in the gaming industry for the last 15 years. And every time there was a recession, actually more people were coming to games, playing and spending money, just because that was their best way to get out of maybe sometimes not the very best reality. To spend the social time with friends, to achieve something, to get somewhere in the dungeon, kill a dragon, and have fun. And I've seen revenues in the gaming industries getting up when everything else was going down. I've seen that a couple of times already, so fingers crossed. Because Web3 and NFT is right now very much connected to the gaming as well.
That's interesting. A little bit pre-show, we were talking about the influence that science fiction, game, anime, a lot of these stories that, particularly when you're young, you see end up getting played out in the real world later on. I think there's also an influence that the reason why some of these early stories hit, the reason why they really resonate within society is not random. It's that in some way it's deeply intuitive that, we might go to Mars, because why wouldn't we, right? We're like on this planet, we're bursting with energy and intelligence and innovation. So like, it would make sense that we kind of keep the system, keep the train going, like go on to the next one and the next one. And so I think the type of stories that get carried out through society and really ripple end up, like you said, playing out or manifesting in reality when you hit your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and you actually have the capital and resources and time to do it. How do you see the influence today? Like, do you stay in touch with the stories that are being told to the youth, and how do you digest those stories or think about what's coming down the pike in terms of like, the story aspect?
There are two sides of the coin. So one side of the coin is that I've been reading lots of sci-fi since I was a kid. I'm still reading everything I could, especially those like Hugo to Language words. And I don't know, from the last years, there's things like Three Body Problem or Children of Time. This is inspiring. This is what sets up the grounds for this future wishful thinking exploration. But I do like sci-fi. I read it a lot and I enjoy it. But what I really believe, what connects every other generation all together, that would be funny, but this is honestly what I think, is TikTok. Because that's one of a black hole thing. When watching it there is a lot of educational stuff. For example, I've been subscribed to a couple of astrophysicists who explain you in short and very straightforward videos what's happening, how it works, and such. However, what I could see, and I have like three, and being like 18, 21, and 23, and what I've seen that TikTok unites us all because we are watching and creating the same jokes, the same cultural code, and the same, narrative. And TikTok is what is uniting us all. So when we all come into one room, we've consumed the same content, the same jokes. I haven't seen it ever before. Because, for example, in Twitter, I don't think they will ever consume the same content I'm consuming. But in TikTok, it's joining every other generation together. And this is what I like about it. It's maybe controversial, but that's what actually happening.
Yeah, I tend to think that TikTok has a higher bandwidth of information throughput. So you're just able to passively consume a lot more, a lot faster. And just the general user interface compared with like, Facebook, which is mostly text, some picture. Instagram is like mostly picture, but a decent amount of text. Twitter, 90% text. And then TikTok is like 99% video, instantly loading. And so there's just not, I can't imagine how you would consume information faster than TikTok. And then I sort of think of TikTok as like, it's the gym you go into in high school where everyone's in the same room, but they're clustered in different areas. So you can see everybody else, but you're kind of like far away. Like you might get one video every day or every week about something that you're not really interested in, but you like, you see like anime or like physics or whatever the thing is, but there's a whole cluster of people that are in that subcluster. It's like we're all in this shared space, but kind of different clusters.
Totally agree. But the most interesting for me difference between the other social networks is that those clusters we're in, TikTok constantly tries to get you into some other and new content. They're constantly trying to merge you like a little bit with another cluster. You're watching, like, I don't know, just the politics and some point, a couple of videos, which you would probably like was the anime. Or you're watching just some funny dances and etc. And then the next time they'll just show you some fun video about the astrophysics, physics. So, and the algorithms are so good that at some point you realize you're consuming more or less a lot of different content. And that's what enhancing your brain cells and neural networks. That's what I like a lot, because the bubbles they created on Twitter or Facebook, I haven't felt that, never. But in TikTok, they're constantly pushing your bubble, and that's fun. That's good.
Now, what do you think about the influence that, if you boil TikTok up to the developers, TikTok is a Chinese-owned country. China has, their infamous firewall, which they really try to ban the internet and ban really all intellectual trade. They're very concerned with preserving ideas and controlling narratives. And this seems to be very relevant because China is, about to be the world's largest economic power, possibly military power. And if they have root access over TikTok, which is the largest social media network, it creates a lot of political agitation, because not only could they see everything you create, see everything you consume, they might see your location, they might have all your private information. And if you were to say 10 years ago, hey, we're going to take hundreds of millions of people's information in the US or in the Western world, and we're just going to give it to the Chinese government, that would start a war immediately. But yet that's kind of what's happened through voluntary divulging of information in return for this entertainment value and connection value. Do you see that as being something that is like the trigger point that creates either a banning of TikTok, or in some way, like for instance, you can't use social media networks in China, but yet China can make social media networks and the rest of the world can use them. So there's a strange one-way barrier that's happening that to me does not seem sustainable. And by the way, tell me a little bit about you. So where are you in the world? What part of the world are you most familiar with or have lived the most, just for context?
That would be a little bit more context that probably you expected. I was born and raised in Ukraine, Kiev. And for many years, I split my life in between LA and Santa Monica and Kiev. And we had a huge office in Kiev right before the war started. But 2 weeks before it started, I rented out a plane and I got everyone out, just from the perspective that if something is going to happen, we're staying in control. And if not, then we will just spend a couple of weeks all together somewhere in Montenegro. And then when everything happened, that was something that saved the company and made a lot of things grow. That was one of the best decisions. Yeah.
Would the men in particular not have been able to leave had you waited the 2 weeks?
No, it was before the war. So I rented out the plane before the war, like 2 weeks before.
Right.
Because I have a gut feeling that something was going to happen. And the worst thing is that I know people from the company who and their relatives were living in the cities where all the atrocities from the Russian army happened, like in Bucha, in Ukraine, they were there. And if I wasn't renting that plane and getting them out, I would probably see either them or their kids. And that was insane because we actually moved everyone with families because I said, you can get your like wife or kid. It's just not the parents, but if you want the parents, they could pay for that. But we were paying for the family. And I remember that after everything happened with all the atrocities and bombings, and I've seen the wife of one of my developers on the streets of Montenegro. She'd seen me and she started crying because that was one of the also very emotional moments because she knew that if we didn't do that, probably she wouldn't be alive. Neither she nor her kid.
Mm.
So that was that. Now we established the office in Lisbon, where everybody is now. Well, everybody from Europe is now in Lisbon, also in Ukraine. We have just a couple of people left in Ukraine. And I hope at the moment, sooner than later, when the war ends, everyone's going to get back because that's hope. But for now, everybody is in Lisbon. So yeah, I'm getting back and forth the UN.
Yeah.
And,
Just out of curiosity, were there any, I know the men were under mandatory conscription, the men in Ukraine couldn't leave was the general message I picked up on. Did any men on the team elect to go back, or what was the general attitude behind the mandatory conscription
we have around
policy?
like 10% a lot of people who actually served in the army. Like the head of famous was in the army and was actually defending the north of Kiev, like Bucha, Ukraine, and the rest. He is now back and working, but he's like on a short boat. He's coming back to the territorial defense when they call him. And we have a couple of more people like from design who are still like at arms and defending the country. So that's what we have.
Mm.
And there were one of the things I did in the first weeks of the war in LA. We created the group called Ukrainian Leaders Against War, where we gathered lots of entrepreneurs and we were connecting with senators and congressmen and congresswomen, of course, in the United States and asking for help. And no, first of all, that was first time in my life when I've seen how democracy works. When I'm talking to the senator from California, I forgot to it's when I read that.
That's all good. The name of the person? Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah. I've been talking with her in her office, and she's great. She's great. She's doing for so many years. She's an amazing woman. So we've been talking with her about what Ukraine needs and how, and why I remembered about that I've been getting on the calls like together on Zoom, a couple of our guys from the company who were like in the trenches. And they were saying like, we are missing this and that and that. And I'm right here defending the country. Please help. So Senator Feinstein, that was her office. So, and that was like Tuesday. And we said like Ukraine is this and this and that. She said, all right, can you do that in writing? Like we sent the email. And Wednesday she came back and said like, is that right? Correct? Did I understand everything? We just did a couple of corrections. And that was probably Thursday when she gathered a bunch of other senators, the friends of ours, etc., and then signed the petition to Joe Biden that looked like Ukrainians need this and this and that. And on Friday, Biden said, oh, well, the senators came to me, so now I'm giving this $1 billion to Ukraine to help with those arms. And I feel like, written words by myself in that petition. So I understand that it was not just done by us, but the thing that he can actually call the senator, tell him like, we need your help. So, all right, what do you need? Like this and that. All right. And then Biden like, okay, like, if senators want, then we need them. And this is $1 billion and ours were sent. So we did a lot of great things with You Love group afterwards. But as I said, those people moved from my company, like we've been fighting in front lines, we've been connecting them to the calls. And one of them, for example, was under the barrage. So she was driving and telling the story about what's happening, how's the war, and then the wine started to drop. And he's like, oh, I'm sorry if I'll pull you back. And like, everything is fine. But when it happens live for the senator or congressman, it helps to bring the energy. And then the guys were doing the live streams from Bucha, Ukraine, and the parents of my wife were in my but anyways, it's probably not the war story of around the coin podcast, but
it's great.
We're helping a lot as a company, as person to person thing, and I just hope that it was so unimaginable for me when it's year 2022. We're building metaverses, we're launching walks to the Mars, and then the guys like, let's kill other people who just think, what the heck, man?
Yeah.
Just build AI, build the metaverse. Do what? Why? Well, why? We're not in year 1933 to 1939. We're in 2022. It's unimaginable. Why?
Yeah.
So that's why, we're having as much as we can. Everyone is more or less safe and sound, but still the war is there, and I just hope that it ends quicker and sooner than later. But what I would like to say to everyone on the call and on the stream, that the amount of help from the US is amazing, and thank you everyone for that.
Yeah. Wow. What a powerful story. Yeah, it certainly seems like the people leading the war, particularly on the Russian side, are just living old fantasies. Like you say, we're in 2022 shooting rockets filled in metaverses. It's like they're not of that mindset. They're really thinking the storylines from, Cold War, World War II. Yeah, right. They're old people. I mean, we have, a gerontocracy of people who are in their 60s, 70s, some 80s leading these countries, US included. It's like, so I think that just puts a tremendous amount of tension between generations on what the priorities are. And the advantage of the young people is that the old people will die. So eventually the stories transition, right? That's one thing we know for sure, is that every human being comes into this world and leaves this world. So if anything, I think that's the saving grace behind keeping the stories moving and not being too fixated and attached to old narratives, because there is way more interesting and exciting future to build, and zero-sum mentality, which is like these kind of conversations, everything we're talking about in the metaverse. And it's not even just the metaverse, it's just the internet. It really opens up the whole world, an entire universe of creative potential, which brings all the financial benefit to your physical reality. You can be in rural Africa with an internet connection on Starlink or something, and then be able to learn a skill or build a product or offer a service that then enhances your prosperity in the physical world around you, which ultimately is
it's actually happening.
It's really happening. And people start to climb up this ladder of, Maslow's hierarchy of food, shelter, relationships. And then it's like a job I don't hate, and actual creative prosperity and sharing that with other people. So we intuitively as people, I think, want to climb this ladder. Right. But then there's also, there's counter tension, right? It's not all roses all the way up.
But, in general, what I believe in, that there is no way where the past can win over the future. So if we are with you are building the metaverses, selling the Mars, the rockets, the Starlinks, the AI. So this narrative, you can't beat it with some old stories like your parents, date like Cold War. So it's not how it works. It's just, as you just said, the time passes, those people die, and the future comes. There is no way out. The past never beat the future.
But it does. The past can, making wrong decisions and having the past forces win on battles create a price for the future. One thing that comes to mind is in the 70s, really the late 60s, 70s, the United States, there was kind of an explosion of psychedelic use. And there was a counter narrative by the president at the time to ban this. And really now it's obvious that it was for political reasons, but the banning of it for 50 years was basically the old ways winning, and then stifling innovation in this area of mental health and plant medicine. And so now it's we have a world where how many people are suffering from mental illnesses, probably because of the stifled research and development in this other area. So the price you pay is you can't ever win. The old ways can't win, but they can slow down prosperity and cause the
progress,
tumors in the collective consciousness. Yeah. Slow down the progress. Yeah. That's how I think of it.
Well, even who am I to talk about the politics, but especially overseas, but still, I know the countries, not only one, who've been adopting anti-abortion laws, in the last couple of years. Really?
Yeah.
Really? I've seen 50 years ago, women were protesting for it, and then they won that, and then the movement goes to the future, and somebody, no, let's get back there. Really?
Yeah. Well, a lot of this is just my thoughts on this is that the tectonic shifts are happening, the tectonic plates are moving, and they're still not settled in yet. So I think really Web3, crypto, blockchain, AI, VR, the metaverse, and you could probably sprinkle in some economic restructuring, the general fatigue of the institutions, US government, large institutional credibility is at an all-time low and decreasing. So I think all these together are like, they're all in transit, right? Like think of your own world, like gaming and NFTs and AI, VR, all this stuff it's not settled in yet. Everyone's really excited because the future has not yet arrived yet, but we're working really hard to make it happen. So because of this movement or this volatility, this unsettling, I think people feel a need to question what is the most assumed truth that we share. And abortion kind of, it has a convergence where it's something that you can push on. It's not relevant today for anything. It's like we didn't, in the year 2022, we didn't develop any technology. It's not relevant other than for the point of, it's like a litmus test on how stable society is. If you can push on that from a regulatory perspective and get like a rock wall pushback, maybe like you could 20 years ago, okay, society is pretty stable. If you can push on it and you're like, okay, we have enough critical mass to like move the, you could almost think of these things like abortion is like a ticker symbol for a stock. You know, the stock of Apple goes up and down and there's pressure on either side. There's buy and sell pressure. And usually in low volatility times, the stock is relatively consistently priced. High volatility times, there's a lot of change in the buy and sell pressure. And so if things rocket up, they rocket down. And think of the same thing can be true in the political sense. You have like a ticker symbol for abortion, right? How many people are on either side of this argument? And in high volatility times, that goes up and that goes down and it moves around a lot. So I think each of these, I think we're not just in a volatile period economically, I think it's socially. And so these ticker symbols, which have been pretty consistent, start to move around.
I would definitely agree with you. And I think it's connected in the hard way. So if the economy was going just out, there was no COVID, no war, no Chinese tension, or no political tensions. So who would ever think like, oh, let's push that button and this button and this, and like antagonize each other just for a little bit more. But at the moment when we feel uncertainty in tomorrow, and this uncertainty is only growing, then it's so much easier to politically sell us something what was in the past, and we remember that when it was true, the times were better, the grass was greener, and you're like, oh, all right, maybe let's get back there with this, and we will feel more stable. So this is where I totally agree with you, and this is just playing on those buttons by politicians. But I just hope that as the moment we overcome the crisis, that tickering it's gonna slow down.
Yeah. My thought is that as a lot of the things that we're really excited about, a lot of stuff that you're working on, a lot of stuff in crypto, Web3, all these technologies start to converge and materialize as real tangible benefits. And they start to normalize as like, you know, every car is driverless. Like instead of looking at phones, we look at like AR glasses, and there's like real substantive benefits practically in people's lives from these technologies. They're not just speculative stuff. Then I think, again, things start to crystallize and we start to move into like good times, quote unquote. But that's the urgency of it, right? That's what fuels us to move in this direction, to build in this direction.
I would add up to that's the quotes from my advisor, Pre Hawkins, who was the founder of Electronic Arts. So we've been discussing a lot, like even many years ago, about the NFTs and trading. And he said something which I've been using and thinking a lot lately, is that at the moment, just one game with a certain amount of users will open up its trading providers in real ownership. Then you can't put the genie back to the bottle. Every other game will be able to be developed with the closed account. Nobody will get to play it. If in this game, I own what I buy, I can trade it or I can flush it. But this is my decision. I won't play the game, which is just, close and I'm like, whoa, what are you trying to do? So that's what I will deliver.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think as long as there's enough of a critical mass, like the genie has to be far enough away from the bottle that it's impossible to put it back in. Like in Bitcoin, right? Like could the US government today ban Bitcoin? I don't know. Like I know that they could pass a law but would there be riots in the streets? Would they practically be able to pass it? It seems like it's almost just too far outside of the bottle to like, what would be the reaction if that happened? Hypothetically, I don't know. I mean, I would protest. That's something I would get out of my house and go to a march for, because I believe in that future so strongly. And I think a lot of people, I almost think Bitcoin maximalism is it's the most underappreciated ideology in that sense, that it's like a sleeper, which is good. You want to have it be a sleeper and then just continue to grow and build and gain notoriety without imploding with stupid scam projects.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. I couldn't agree more.
I want to ask you a little bit more about the trajectory of, I mean, we touched on a few big ideas. Gaming, obviously, with what you're working on at DMarket. We talked about the war, your experience in Ukraine, and we talked about the trajectory of human beings. Is there anything of those that you wanted to add to this? Anything that you think about, or any concepts or ideas that you wanted to throw out there?
Well, this is funny story because, for example, I have an example. I don't know whether this is something you wanted to hear or not, but this is something I've been debating with friends a lot recently, that I'm pushing as hard as possible for the metaverses to come out, to be built, and to be successful. And thus, the next step for us will be the actual Matrix experience, where like Neuralink or any other company just put the wire into our head, and we have the full experience like we're in a dream, but we're in a game, like full immersive experience. So what's been disturbing me a little bit and thinking about it, that if we get to that technology before we get to Mars, probably nobody's gonna go to Mars anymore. So if we will be able to just plug in the plug and build the metaverses we want, fly on the dragons, conquer the pirate ships, or do whatever we want with full experience, for us as humanity, probably it would be close to impossible to gather and to push us to other planets. And this is maybe a strange thing to think about it, but crossing fingers that we first start building the colony on Mars, and just then afterwards we get to the full immersive experiences. That's one of the controversial thoughts. Maybe you wouldn't agree.
Yeah, I tend to think there's similar to what we were talking about earlier, where there's a distinct difference in lived reality from generation to generation. Like Putin's experience of World War II, Cold War, like that's his head, that's his base reality. And then you and I largely are like internet children. So we're thinking like, what are we building? How are we constructing it? That's our base reality. And so that defines our social networks. It defines all of our occupational expertise. It defines all of our value structures and what we really care about with, I'd be bothered more if someone was banned on Twitter than if they were, if they went to prison for, right? Like the reality, if they went to prison and they could tweet, to me, it makes no difference. I'm like, well, this person that I'm interacting with on Twitter is still there, and now they're just in a different place. So, but there is just a difference between realities. And I think what you're elucidating is that there's going to be the next step in base reality, which is like plugged into the back of the head. Probably true, like given enough time frame, it's hard to see otherwise, like why that wouldn't be the scenario. But I do think that will be nonlinear distribution across society. It's not going to be like a spark where everyone wants it all at once. So people who still live in base reality, physical reality, they're going to be the ones to be like, I don't need that Neuralink stuff. I'm going to Mars. So that's the great thing about the fact that we have billions of people and different preferences and ideas, is like, you don't need everyone to go. You just need like, a couple thousand people to go and see the planet, right? Yeah. So I'm more up.
But honestly, if you will give me the choice, like right now, plug the plug. So let's go to the metrics. Really, honestly, I like the immersive experience. I'd rather build the worlds, and deeply inside myself, I think we live in the virtual world. Just we don't have the controls. So at the moment, I can build up close to real world, but some different rules, socialize with my friends, and fly the dragons to the castle. I will do that 100%.
Yeah.
So I just think that probably, or first of all, I like you calling this the base reality. So this is telling me a lot about how we think in many ways. So yeah, I just think that, for example, in the next couple of years, what we should see, and I'll just say that, and in a couple of years, let's see whether it happens or not. I really believe in lots of AR things. Like the next generation would be obsessed with wearing those glasses, or even the lenses, just the contact lenses, where the whole reality will be augmented, and we will meet each other and see each other in the base reality, but in a different form.
Right.
Skins.
Yeah.
And this is what the next generation 100% will be used to. And this amazes me even more because it merges the base reality and the virtual one. And we can still touch each other, but see whatever the heck we want with the parrot or with the dragon. And I hope that comes sooner than later, especially was I've heard that the Apple glasses are in the works. Lots of other companies are doing it. And even that guy who been working in HoloLens, he was working HoloLens and then for like a couple of years. And then he went back to China, opened up his own company. And yesterday he started selling his AR glasses on Amazon for like $300. HoloLens soon team, but failed to win. So probably that AR future. Yeah. I think for us as consumers, it's good because it's $300. It's not $10,000.
Yeah.
So that would be the next steps for us as consumers to see that gamification in the real world. Whereas again, NFTs, games creating some shows, entertaining. That's what I'm excited to see in the next upcoming years.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. It took, I mean, even when the iPhone first came out, conceptually amazing, lightning, everyone got it immediately. iPod, phone, computer, or the internet all together, like that Steve Jobs' famous speech. But then it's like, iPhone 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 was kind of slow and barely usable. Like, I think iPhone 5 was really the one where you're like, okay, I could actually use this. I could go on the internet. I could check my email. Like prior to that, it was so painfully slow and like, it was, but I think that's the beauty of it, right? Like they're on Quest 3 right now, like Meta's about to release that. So that's the natural evolution. Things are really expensive, slow, bulky, but like, as long as you can get the hook, right? And you get enough traction to keep the ball rolling, that's what matters.
I clearly remember when like 50% of my work shifted to iPhone 3GS because it was enough power and enough connectivity and enough what it was giving me just to do already shuffle my work just from the phone on the go anywhere I want. The next one, that's where iPhone Core, which had those, it wasn't smooth on the board on the corners. It was like
beveled.
Yeah, I remember that one. I think it covered like 100% of what I need for my work. And I remember people when they've been meeting with me somewhere in the middle of the day, like, oh, you're watching my phone, constantly replying emails, and saying like, yeah, that's my job. And they didn't believe me that you can do your work on the phone. Yeah. So I remember, and I agree with you, but for me, it started from 3GS.
Yeah. In fact, even until like 2010, people didn't even believe that that companies were going to build apps. They're like, why would you ever leave the computer? You have all this functionality, a great user interface, a mouse, keyboard, but the one feature that the iPhone had that you could take it anywhere, just you made it so form factor, all that shit kind of just was. There was 1,000x feature benefit in the fact that you could take it anywhere. But yeah, awesome stuff, man. Let's wrap here. It was so fun. I appreciate you going extra, Vlad. Congrats on all the progress, especially through such turbulent times. And it's such an inspiring story too, to see democracy actually function and be useful to help you, the team, the country. So DMarket, do you have any personal social handles you want to throw out? Places where you're personally writing or tweeting or anything?
What, you mean the social network accounts or?
For you personally? We'll include all the show notes for DMarket.
So I didn't prepare anything just to share. It just was a pleasure to talk and
Oh no, I was going to ask you, are there any places on the internet that you want to put out, like your Twitter handle or places that people can reach you or follow you?
Yeah. Well, my Twitter is Portall Vlad. My Instagram is Portall with double L, because since I was a kid and playing Diablo, the first one, I've been dreaming about the portal teleporting people. So writing it was double L since then, and that's my nickname since then. So yeah, Portall Vlad or Portall on Instagram. That's me. And thank you very much for the invitation, Mike, and what a pleasure to converse. And hope everyone has the same feeling after watching what we just did together.
Talk soon, man.